Hello, welcome back to day 21 of 30 days of daily play inside your 365-day art journal called the Daily Play. This is Bubba. This is my Boston Terrier Pug Australian Shepherd mix, and he is normally sitting at my feet, but he hopped up on my lap, so I thought I would introduce you to him. Today we're going to be tapping back into our childlike curiosity by painting in the color wheel. So if we remember our primary colors, which are red, blue, and yellow, we're going to be starting with those. And then I'm going to be teaching you a little tiny bit of color mixing if you only have maybe a few colors, like 12 colors in your palette. If you do have one of those palettes that has like 36 or more colors, that is not cheating. I think there's a lot of purist conversations about watercolor where you have to always mix your own colors, but I am a firm believer, especially when you're a beginner, to just use the tools that you have on hand. I actually have my 5-year-old daughter's kit right in front of me. I actually gave her one of my 36 color palettes that obviously she has used a ton, and I love using this palette as well. I bring these to a lot of my events. This is just 36 colors that are all inside these little half pans. They still have the 12 that we're going to be using in our other pan, like this one. And today I'm going to be teaching you from the kit that is the palette that is inside the Daily Play art kit. So I've actually taken some damp paper towel and I cleaned out my palette because we are going to be working with so many new colors. I want to make sure I have enough mixing surface. You could also just grab a regular ceramic kitchen plate and wash it afterwards, and that would be totally fine too. So adding to our lesson from yesterday on graded washes, we would never just take a color directly from our watercolor palette and bring it to the page. You want to load up your brush with pigment, bring it to your mixing palette, and make sure you have a nice juicy mixture that you've added lots of water to for your primary colors here. So you want to get that tea-like consistency that we were going for yesterday. So not straight from your palette, you want to mix it with some water so that it almost has the consistency of pop or soda, depending on where you're watching from in the world. And we are doing red on our color wheel. So I have a note here that you should be able to read the color labels. You should still be able to see the color labels after you've added your swatch of color, because with watercolor the paints are transparent. So in acrylic the paints are opaque, which means you can't see through them, but with watercolor they're transparent. So you just add water, and that way you'll know if you have the right kind of paint to water ratio if you can still read the color label beneath the swatch you just added. So you can still see here it says red. We don't want any puddles on the page, so remember you tap off any excess water in your water cup, or you can tap on a piece of paper towel as well. So I just did my red, and now I'm going to fill in the rest. So I'm using cadmium red, cobalt blue, and lemon yellow. You'll notice there's these little color labels on each of the half pans inside this kit. Most kits will also have color labels, so make sure you look out for those. And this is just going to help if you are following other tutorials that you'll know exactly what the colors are called. So I'm going to mix up some water with my cobalt blue so that it's not that thick butter consistency, but that I will still have some transparency when I lay it down. And I'm using a combination of the tip of my brush and the widest part. And again, you know that you did it because you can still read the color label beneath your wash. Now I'm going to move on to yellow. This is again the lemon yellow, making sure I rinse my brush really well before tapping in here. Swatching my yellow. And now we're going to get into mixing our secondary colors. So to make a secondary color like violet, we need to mix two primary colors, blue and red. So we already had our red mixed up here, and we have our blue here. So I simply took some red right from the palette here and started mixing it in with the blue to get a true violet. This is going to take some experimenting. It's actually quite fun. And you have some visual references up here so that you know what the true violet looks like. And then when we get to the tertiary colors, how those are a little slightly different. Don't feel like you have to make it exact, but you're aiming for some consistency. So I have a little mix of violet here, making sure I can still see that color label, and I haven't made my mixture too opaque. It's looking good. And there we go. And for our tertiary colors, you're just going to add more of the primary color. So we have violet, we have blue. We're going to add more blue to the violet. So I can actually just take the blue that's already here, maybe add a little bit more. And we have a blue violet. That just means there's a touch of the primary color in with the secondary color. So the secondary color of violet is equal parts primary colors, and the tertiary color is the secondary color with a touch more of the primary color. So we have our tertiary violet, or secondary violet, sorry, here with a touch more blue to make that blue violet. Now the opposite is true for red violet. We have our base violet here, so I'm going to bring some base violet over here and let it mix in with this red. And now we have red violet. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about what it means when colors are next to each other on the color wheel, what it means when they're opposites on the color wheel, and how knowing those different color combinations can be really helpful with watercolor, and it is what sort of visually attracts us to paintings. So to make green, I've just taken that lemon yellow, added some cobalt blue until I get this nice green for our secondary color. And then I'm going to follow that exact same process for my tertiary colors of blue green and yellow green. Again, making sure you can still read that color label. And don't stress if your mixtures were maybe a little bit too opaque and you can't see the color label. You're learning, and that paint to water ratio is something that you will probably be experimenting with for your whole painting life. It's just kind of part of the beauty, actually, of watercolor. So yellow green would just be more yellow added to that green mixture. So I'm going to mix that up right here just so it's more of a yellow green. That's a lovely color. So you can imagine if you were painting in leaves, it would be really nice to have different shades of green. And then the opposite, so we're going to add a little bit more blue to that mixture here to get a blue-green, maybe a little bit more. Perfect. Oh yeah. It's kind of like getting into the teal territory. And there's not one exact color you're aiming for. You just want to be able to visually tell the difference between your colors. So to mix orange, I have some of that cadmium red and lemon yellow here. And I'm just going to mix them together until I get a nice orange. True orange. Like so. Feel free to paint outside the lines. And then for red orange, we want red to be more dominant in that mixture. I could have even added a touch more red here, but that's okay. And the opposite, so we want to add more of that lemon yellow to our orange. I think even more. Lovely. And depending on what paints you're using, what palette you're using, your colors might not look exactly like mine, but the techniques that you just learned are going to be the same. So you're starting with your primary colors, you're mixing two primary colors to get a secondary color, and then you're adding a touch of the primary on either end for your tertiary colors. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about how we can look at the color wheel and create different color combinations to create sort of beautiful color schemes that are going to elevate your paintings. And I just want to touch on cleaning up your palette. It is totally fine if your paints look a little messy. I could probably do a better job of making sure that my brush is cleaned off before going into a new color, but it is so easy to clean up your palette. So I see a little blue on top of the red here, and all you need is a clean brush. So I'm just dipping my brush in my water cup, making sure that the brush is nice and clean, and you're just gonna scoop that up off the top and rinse it in your water cup. Same thing here with this yellow. That's a darker color, so it's gonna take me a minute to sort of scrub it out, and then I would get a clean brush again and wipe that down. You could also get a piece of paper towel and just dab the top, and then you're good to go. And make sure you check off your day 21. You just painted in the color wheel. Make sure that you grab some scrap watercolor paper, 140-pound watercolor paper if you want to keep experimenting, and hopefully you experimented a little bit with those graded washes before coming to today. If today felt quite challenging, just know again that's totally normal. Watercolor is one of the trickiest mediums actually to learn, so pat yourself on the back that you just tried something new. See you tomorrow for watercolor color schemes.